going, everyone? Tim here, Tier 2 Adventures. Hope everyone's all well there. As always, thanks for tuning in. Much appreciated. And in our little scale world, we've had a big announcement this week. The new 2023 SORRCA rules have officially dropped. This affects those of us that do attend and go do SORRCA-based comps. We host SORRCA-based comps, or even at local areas that, may just be local, your local group of guys, but your rules, your builds, and stuff like that are based off of SORRCA. The rules dropped, and then it was almost an instant mushroom cloud of chaos. But dust is settling. People are talking. Chats are going wild. There is a lot of stuff to change. For example, just in general, the previous SORRCA rules with your build requirements, points, and course penalties and stuff like that, previous SORRCA was about 12, 13 pages long, give or take. The new current SORRCA rules section printed off is 41 pages. Now, there are 3 pages that are pictures, and then there's 4 or 5 pages in the front that are just cover letter and the table of contents. First, down below in the description, I will link the SORRCA Facebook group. It is a private group. You will have to answer questions to get in. If you do not answer the questions, by default, you are automatically declined. So if you are a real person, not a bot, join the group, answer the questions. In addition to the group, I will link the PDF file for the new current rules. Once you click the link and actually download it, Google Drive, the entire rule set has hyperlinks and stuff through it. Once it is downloaded, the hyperlinks will work, and then you can click and kind of bump your way through everything. In addition to that, I will link the feedback form that SORRCA has made public for people that are seeing the rules, reading the rules for the first time. If there's some questions or things we don't agree with, we click that link and we fill out the form. And it is a pretty straightforward form. It is actually broken down into sections. You have like general guideline questions, class 1 section, class 2, the rectangle section. We'll get into that later. So it's sections. So if you have a class 1 question, you type it out in the class 1 box and stuff like that and submit, and good, and they all go back. First things first, recommend definitely at least downloading the file. If you have like a bigger tablet or something that you can read comfortably on, that is fine. But I do like to have a hard copy printed off. Actually, generally will have a couple. One that I kind of go through and highlight and write on stuff like this, and then I will have just a nice clean copy that I use for like hosting events and stuff like that. Either you download it or print it off. First things first, go through and read it. I know it's 41 pages. Go through, read it. Everything, every line, every page, go through and read it. Then, honestly, maybe even read it again. Then, once you've read it again, you're going to turn, like myself and others, and look at your trucks, and you're going to be like, they are out of spec. As of mine, currently, my class 1, 2, and 3, for either minor reasons or other reasons, all 3 of them in one way or another are currently illegal, and all of them have lost scale points in some way. It's not the end of the world. Trust me, it's not. It's going to be fine. I personally, and a lot of others, we see it as a new challenge. It's a new challenge. We like building. We like the competing side of it, so it's a new challenge. It's more stuff for me to build and to experiment on and try out stuff like that. So once you've went through and just truly read it, and then yes, you look at your truck, you're like, man, that's not legal. Go sit down with your rules again with each of your trucks, so each of your trucks, you go through the general guidelines, make sure all that stuff's good between your 3 trucks. You're good. Then get to the class 1 section. Pull it completely out. Pull your class 1, and your class 2 and class 3, etc. Then go through, read the rules, look at your truck, and then actually see, okay, what's too much, what's different, what do I need to change? And I could almost guarantee when you read them the first time, you look at your truck, you're like, holy crap, I need everything. Then when you actually sit down with the rules, with your truck in front of you, we'll tape measure, micrometer, measuring some things, writing some stuff down. I don't think it's going to be as bad as you think it is. I know I was that way. I looked at my truck, I was like, crap. And then I sat down, I started reading, I'm like, actually, I'm not as bad off as I thought I was. It'll be a couple changes. I'll just tell you now, my class 1, it's going to be a few fixes, but it's possible. My class 2 will need a whole new body and everything, most likely. But I also already suspected the bug body just based on its size and dimensions to be affected by whatever new rules were dropped. So I had already anticipated that it would not be legal. So that one's not a bad blind side for me. And then class 3, a few changes, if any. It actually might be okay all the way. Again, don't freak out. Just look at your cars, see what all you got to change. It's going to be stuff here, stuff there. It's probably not going to be as bad as you want. Mostly if it is stuff that's illegal, it's because we were probably already kind of building in a lot of the gray area. And I know that's a couple parts of my trucks were in the very gray area of the previous rules. That gray area has been addressed in some way or another with the rule sets between pictures or wording. So stuff's there. Changes will be made. And another thing is, really, we all have had plenty of fair warning. We knew at least a year, if not 2 years ahead of time, that the next set of rules, and they warned us, the reason for keeping the rules the same for 2022 is because they were going to make a complete overhaul on the rule set. We knew big changes were coming. So on that, I like to say, we really shouldn't be blindsided. We knew big rules were coming. We knew big changes were coming. So, but yes, it is a lot of information. 41 pages. It's a lot of stuff to process. We've been using basically the same set of rules for however many years now with minor changes here and there. Now we truly have a full book that we need to go through. It is what it is. Stay calm. It's not the end of the world. Don't throw the trucks away. Don't sell your trucks. It's okay. Give it a little bit at least. Trust me. We'll get to some of that here in a minute. What I'm going to do here in this video is I'm going to go over, I'm not reading page for page on this. I'm going to go through and I'm going to touch base on a lot of the major changes that I see that stuck out immediately. And, just a few other things here. And that's going to be from the general guidelines to each class, to the points, to the course penalties. I'm going to touch base on the major changes that I've seen and noticed that are big changes and will affect a lot of things. So I'm going to touch base on those major changes. And there will be updates, and I'll explain those in a minute. So probably the next few episodes in this, everything new SORCA is just going to be in the same little video series. It's just going to be episode after episode. So when updates and stuff come out, we'll do another little video kind of touching base on those or maybe clarifying some things. Also, your guys' feedback, any comments, questions, or anything like that, put them down below. I'm really going to try to stay on top of these comments a lot to use as get information and then try to help everyone out in future videos. Then once the dust settles down, a couple versions have been changed, then we're going to dive into each class. And then once we get into each class, we will look at each of my trucks, how they currently are. And then we will start the process. We will go through the truck, show what needs to be changed, and then show how I changed them. So expect that later on down the road. First off, what's new for 2023? There is a new rules format. That's a obvious one here with all of this. Next up here, I'm sure lots of us have seen plenty of memes, is the rectangle. And we'll touch base on that here in a minute. Third, this is a living rules process. There's a page on that here in a second. Next, no local override or modified SORCA, which differs from the previous version because it stated in the beginning you could host a SORCA orientated event and you can make changes as long as you gave out fair warning. That is no longer the case. If you host or advertise your event as SORCA, it will must follow these rules page for page. At least currently, that is how it is stated in red. Next up, some classes have changed and some points have been revamped. So let's get into it. So first up, the living rules process. So how does it work? So event hosts reach out to the committee to report concerns via questions on the official Facebook group or the feedback form. The committee will review the concern and make a ruling. If the concern requires action, we will update the rules and publish a new version to the public. The new rules will go into effect after the ruling is made public, and the new rules version will be dated to indicate when it goes live. And the last part here, all rule changes will be frozen 60 days prior to nationals and will update again after as needed. A few things. This is good and bad, but honestly, it's more good than bad. So when rules come out, boom, here it is. They're in effect January, and they're the rules all the way till the next set of rules. So if something happened, some gray area got exploited, or a certain material or something was exploited, you dealt with that all year long. There was no changes to that particular thing all year long. Now with this process, if something like that happens, something is missed in the rules, something was overlooked, something is exploited, or something is made, it can be addressed and changed or accounted for rather quickly for the most part. There's still a committee, SORCA is still a committee. They all have to vote, stuff like that. They have to get organized. They all have lives outside of this too. So, fast, but not like, it's not going to be instant, but it will be faster and it can happen throughout the year. So that is good. So certain things like that can be addressed, or if you have questions like, okay, does this count? You don't have to wait till next year for it to say, hey, this counts. That could be put in there now. Like, okay, this is what we actually mean by this, or this wording was wrong. This is actually what it is. Stuff like that, super awesome. The downside to that is if you're building, everything's good, especially if you build, and I've been guilty of it too, build in the gray area of certain things. If you build in the gray area and that gray area is then exposed and changed, then your build obviously is no longer legal, and then you have to change again. So if you build strictly in the gray area, yes, expect changes or expect to change your build probably several times within a year. That's just how it's going to be. Honestly, it is what it is. I will probably still build in the gray in several areas, and I will build within the rules clearly in certain areas. It just depends on how I'm feeling, or depends on that section that I want to build gray in. But that's something I now have to expect. I'm like, okay, I'm here. I am gray. Legal, but very gray. The next week, illegal. All right, time to change it. Something that I will expect, and if you build that way, you need to expect that too. Having the rules frozen before Nationals, also very good. That way, because Nationals is a big deal. Some people build months ahead of time for Nationals. So you at least have a 2-month window of no rule changes. So boom, your stuff is not changing until after Nationals. You're good to go. The new process will be strictly following what is written in the latest version of the rules. Rulings or conversations from Facebook Messenger, screenshots, smoke signals, etc. does not matter. If it is not printed and written in the current, most recent version, it does not matter. That is good. And again, back to that feedback form. So they got the rules out for us, on Halloween. So the rules are out, 2023. We still got a couple months, and honestly, no major SORCA events are really planned for January or even February necessarily, other than local SORCA stuff here and there. So we do have several months before major events that these rules will truly really apply. So we have time. So that, like they've mentioned on the Facebook group, there's several videos explaining what they've been doing, how the process is working. So feedback's already being put in. They're already taking that feedback, going through it, addressing, discussing, and making changes. And they said in the latest video, they said basically throughout November, this is what it's going to be. Probably take a week, take in feedback, take a week, discuss feedback, make changes, release new version. Another week, more feedback in, again, discuss, make changes, release new version, feedback. So we'll expect 2-3 versions to come out this month of November. Early mid-December, there should be a very good, much more solid version ready to rock and roll and start on to the 2023 season. So knowing there will be several versions coming out, like I mentioned earlier, don't throw your trucks away, don't trash your trucks. Actually, don't even start rebuilding your trucks yet. They said, I'm waiting for this dust to settle. I'm waiting for a couple versions to come out, with the changes, see how everything changes, and truly see where my building plane lies before I really start into tackling each of the trucks. You can maybe go ahead and start acquiring some stuff, but I'm going to start making any cuts until at least towards the end of November, early December. That is when we will really start to tackle in and really get after these new rules. I may do a couple test fits here and there just to kind of see where everything's looking, but we're not going to just truly tackle it for at least a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and get started on this, go through like the general section, and I'm going to touch base on the bigger major changes that I see that are most likely going to stick. Now, if you are watching this video down the road in a month, 2 months, this living rules could have very well and most likely very well will have changed from what I'm reading right now. So if you in a few months are watching this video, so look down below at the date this video was published. If it's been a bit, don't take everything in the video word for word. You need to go through, you need to follow the link, get the latest version of the rules, and then check. Some of the, like I said, It's probably not going to be the same. There will be some changes. So don't build, if you're doing a build or doing something in this video, or honestly even the next few videos, if you're doing them 3, 4, 6 months after they're posted, and then you're all done, and then you didn't look at the rules and it's not legal, fair warning, check the date. This was published to make sure the rules haven't changed. First up, general vehicle section. A lot of this is basically stayed the same. New options that are available have been added on here, even just better examples and wording of some of the items before. One thing, twin vertical plate chassis is not on a restricted list as it was previously. I know there were some chassis that were classified as twin vertical plate, but they were borderline. So it looks like twin vertical plates are back on the menu if that is your thing. Next up here, I'm just going to specifically talk about transmissions. Dig and selectable over-under drives are only allowed in Class 3. Multiple methods can be installed and used at the same time in Class 3. So that is talking your twin VFD that comes in the Phoenix. It has dig and selectable over-under drive. That is only allowed in Class 3. And then talks about transfer case here, actually gives a description of what a transfer case is. I know that was one thing that I put on my feedback form, is I had questions about the T210 transmission. Because currently, 2022, it counts as a transfer case, but there is a little bit of question here that I have questions on for the new rules, if it qualifies or not. Next up, like weights, it gives examples of weights, because I know that's always been a question. People ask, well, what about brass knuckles? That's added weight. Yes, but it's a factory replacement. Now, if it's like a knuckle off, like that's commonly used on like a Sporty that you can put slugs in to add weight, those aren't legal. But replacement parts, even if they weigh heavier, those are perfectly fine. Next thing here, and this is just because this is for tech tables and stuff, one thing here, static ride height. This method is used to check parameters for width and height as required for tech-in. To determine static height, set your vehicle on a flat surface with all steering tires pointed straight. Push down until full compression is achieved. Remove your hand and allow the vehicle to settle naturally. This is your static ride height. So you come over, you set your table on the tech table, the tech guy pushes down and lets off. As you can see, my truck doesn't move. Where it settles, just like that. That is your static height, and that's what stuff is going to be measured on at the tech table when the rectangle gets involved. A little rhyme there, album drops this fall. There is still the tire ban list, which I don't think has really changed much. I see a couple new names, but nothing crazy, nothing that really that we wouldn't expect. Class 1, still 4.19 is your maximum tire diameter. No tire modifications allowed. Class 2 and 3 both have a tire minimum and a tire maximum now. So for Class 2, has to have a minimum of 4.2 diameter tire and a maximum of 4.75. Tire lugs can be removed, siped, grooved, or trimmed. So you can't necessarily run your Class 1 tires in Class 2 and you do your normal 4.75. Now for Class 3, it is a 4.76 minimum diameter and a 6-inch maximum diameter. So you're not running Class 2 tires in Class 3 anymore. You at least have to, tires are getting up there. For Class 3, lugs may be removed, siped, grooved, or trimmed. Tires may be cut and shut. All parts must be from a legal tire. So you can cut and shut a tire, which is what I have in my Class 3, but all parts of the tire have to be from a legal tire. And then, as before, all diameters are per manufacturer specifications. Any tire without manufacturer specs will be measured flat on the table. Next thing here talks about the rectangle. And we are actually going to skip this section and probably do a video on the rectangle itself. With some of the SORRCA posts that they've had and a couple of the videos, they have mentioned with some of the explanations, there were some issues with the scaling and some of the wording on the diagram. We're going to skip in depth right now, but just for reference in some of this stuff. It's going to be broke down into 3 sections. We have a front section, a center section, and a rear section, or front rectangle, center rectangle, rear rectangle. Sorry, that's how it is. And each one, Class 1, 2, and 3, all have this page with different views. And in here, it's going to show different measurements and stuff like that, as far as where heights and stuff are, what's allowed, trimming, pinching, doving, both sides, etc., stuff like that. But like I said, we'll do a specific video on this once everything's more final. We're going to tackle into Class 1. We're just going to talk about some of the bigger changes in Class 1 and some things to expect. For reasons or another, each one of my trucks is illegal. Minor changes, big changes, whatever. It's a new challenge. That's all I'm looking at it. So, before we continue on, again, some of this stuff may change if you're watching this down the road. fair warning. So first off, when you're going through each of these classes, you'll have your description, and then you're going to have an overall rectangle section, center rectangle section, front rectangle section, and a rear rectangle section. Now those are for your actual widths, lengths, heights, and stuff like that to measure. But we're just going to go here with the overall one because it does cover basically everything. Some of the big stuff right here that we're looking at is cab or driver/passenger area is required and must be at least 4.5 inches from the bottom edge of the body or slider to the top of the body or cage work. If the roof is removed, this section of the cab exists. So Class 1 previously did not have a minimum body height requirement, and it does now. And that is measured here from the bottom of the body to the top of the roof. So that area has to be 4.5 inches tall. Right here, the bottom edge of either the slider or body cannot be higher than the top of the wheel rim at static ride height for the length of the entire center section. Currently, as it's written, this bottom of the body cannot be higher than my wheel. The actual wheel, not wheel and tire, the actual wheel at full rest. And I'm actually good there. So, yay. Then moving on into length. Must extend beyond the leading edge of the frontmost tire and the trailing edge of the rearmost tire. And I do not believe bumpers actually count in this based on the rectangle. So your body has to be past your front tire, the front edge of your front tire, and has to extend past the rear edge of your rear tire. And then big change here, width. Must be, and this is talking again, your overall rectangle is your body. Width must be at least as wide as the inside front tire track width, measured from the top tire bulge to top tire bulge in all three sections. So, all three sections are referring to front, center, rear. So, for your body, it has to be as wide as your track width, which is here, inside your tires. So, what that means, no tire coverage is required for Class 1. They have, and it has been clarified, open wheel is allowed in Class 1. And that did cause a little bit of a frenzy because tire coverage has been a major part of keeping Class 1 the way it has been. And I see multiple sides of it. Part of me is a little more relaxed, is not saying that I'm going to build where my tires are just sticking out here, because me personally, I don't think that would look appropriate on certain builds and bodies, but it does remove a little bit of stress when I'm worrying about, man, is that a millimeter here or a millimeter there too much to one side or too much over? And also helps with like the tech table. So you're sitting there, you're trying to measure people's, before it was that 50% tire coverage. You're sitting there trying to measure, like, is it 50%? Is it not quite 50%? It's gone now. You don't have to worry about it. So for now, that is staying as well, and that has been clarified. On the other side of that, I think it opens up for other body options or other build options for stuff to have more. Because some bodies, it was just hard to get all that tire coverage, or you had to make a lot of some weird fenders to get everything covered. Now you're open for creativity and that building of it. Again, it's just going to go over each of the sections individually. Next, we're going to talk about the chassis. No part of the chassis or suspension can be visible when they penetrate through the body. Adjustable length chassis are allowed. A skid plate is required and must be parallel to the body's rocker panels. So, no part of the chassis can be visible. And I know this got me and a lot of others in Class 1 with our shock towers through the bed. That is not legal. But, and it already has been clarified as well, you can simply cover those up with scale accessories, like a larger fuel cell or a hollowed out cooler or an ammo can. All that stuff will work, or even use of a tonneau cover. That's a relatively easy fix. And it has been clarified that that will be allowed. Adjustable link chassis and a skid plate is required. Now, if you see, it doesn't mention something, but it has already been verified. Class 1 will still require a flat skid. It cannot be angled in Class 1. That has already been verified. Now, one thing I did not cover or mention in that chassis, no chassis material requirement or shock tower requirement. So, chassis are now open to different materials, carbon fiber, G10, etc., and shock towers are no longer required. They don't have to be bolted, brazed, or welded, or even have shock towers. So, again, that expands multiple options for Class 1 to bring in some creativity, either for more scale side or performance side, however you see it. Honestly, I think that's a pretty cool change because, one, it it gives more options and stuff out there to build with. Moving on down a few more things. That's going to go through flatbeds and stuff like that. The next part here on is the bumper section. Bumpers previously have been a thing on Class 1. They must be as wide as the widest part of the windshield. That's been a thing. Now it's just simply, it's to the rectangle. It has to fill that spec. But both front and rear bumper, any portion that is above the top of the tire or behind the leading edge of the front tire or rear tire will not count towards the bumper requirement. And that actually currently has me as well. Because based on this body and where I could previously cut and everything to, my bumper is above my tires. And I do have a curve here in my bumper, and that curve is exactly even parallel with the front tire. So that was a very popular talking point on several of the pages. And the last part here, tires may not extend beyond the front or rear bumper. That's a given. If they can't extend past the body, they can't obviously extend past the bumpers. So then prohibited mods, no rear steer, no dig or selectable overdrive. If your Class 1 for whatever reason has either of those, they need to be mechanically locked out. So now we're going to move on to Class 2. Again, we're just going to touch over a few of the major changes that I see on here. And once again, yes. Now, I was not necessarily blindsided by this. I installed the bug body recently and got it pointed out, knowing that the bug was probably going to be infected with whatever the new rules entailed. And currently, as it sets, yes, the way some things are worded, the bug, the way I have it set up, is out. Now, if a few things get worded differently, could bring it back in, or some modifications. I could probably get it in or close. Time will tell. Again, we're going to go with the overall rectangle section that we're seeing here. Now, for Class 2, similar to how it had before, it does have a body height requirement, which is 4.5 inches tall. Now, unlike previously, it's going to be changed how it's measured. Previously, we would always measure from the bottom of the skid to the top of the roof. That's how we got our 4.5 inches. Now it is specifically from the bottom of the body to the top of the roof. So that is where your measurement is going to come from. So that's something to keep in mind. And next up here, the overall length and coverage must be at least to the leading edge of the frontmost wheel rim and to the trailing edge of the rearmost wheel. So your body, chassis, however it is, needs to at least come to the front edge of the wheel and then to the rear edge of the wheel. It has to be, unlike previously, the chassis, it had to be 3 inches longer than your wheelbase. That is not necessarily the case now. It is just, we're going from wheel to wheel. So that's all going to depend on your wheelbase and everything else that you have set up. That will determine how long your body and stuff needs to be. If you are reading like the Class 2 rules, and then we'll see it again in Class 3 rules, there's some center sections dealing with like a 1 inch from trailing edge and stuff like that. That was mentioned in one of the videos on the SORRCA page. That is a misprint. Something did not get copied over. There will be measurements there, but these are not the correct measurements. So if that measurement has been freaking you out, which that was one measurement I was really like, really? That's an odd one. It is being addressed. They already said that was not correct. So that will be changed. So if that's a big thing that's freaking you out, don't worry. A lot of that part right here is going to be reworded. Then it's talking about width here. Again, very similar to how it already was in Class 2. The inside of your tires had to at least be even or inside the outer edge of your body. It's very similar there, at least as wide as the inside track width of the front tires, the entire length of the center section. So that is something. As before, your tire had to at least be within like the door, however wide it was. Now it is your cab, the center section, the center rectangle, has to at least be as wide as your track width all the way through. So that is also something. So it's going to be a little more of an area rather than just, oh, I got it tucked in just that corner of the door. It does look like it is going to have to be that whole center section now. That will also affect some of these bodies. More so, kind of like the bug here. The bug overall is tapered in. So that does affect that. And again, said we're not going necessarily in depth over each specific rectangle section. And these are subject to change. They said there was some scaling issues and some miswording on some of these pictures that are currently in here, but we're just going to do a brief description. Previously Class 2, like you could have body modifications. You could have like 2 or 3, you could pinch the front or pinch the rear or both sides. You can only do 2 of 3. Now, based off these pictures and your build requirements and measurements, you can pinch the front, you can pinch the rear, and you can have both sides as well. So you can have all three as long as everything is going to meet the individual requirements of each section. That opens up opportunity in certain areas and does kind of open up some opportunity for some bodies. Now, in that, one thing it does say is cab-only vehicles are allowed as long as the rear section meets the rear rectangle. So with a cab only meeting these requirements and stuff, once they're finalized, it's not that it's going to be impossible. It is going to be very hard to accomplish a cab-only build, just based on the other requirements and some of the measurements they are going to put back in there. So, not impossible, but it looks like it is going to take some work. Then just the last bits of Class 2 there, talking about what types of chassis, steering, body requirements, stuff like that. Next thing here, bumpers. There was also some miswording, I believe, on the bumpers, or they said they needed to just scale it up better so it can be more easily seen with the diagrams. But as of right now, the way it's written, the width of the front or rear bumper must extend beyond the body and chassis. So that's a given. It has to extend past that. And bumpers must be at least the width of the rectangle section. Now, what's that saying here is talking about right here. This rectangle section is how wide the bumper has to be. Now, this rectangle section has to at least be half as wide as the track width. So, for example, my track width here is 6 inches. Inside tire to inside tire is 6 inches. The bumper, or as narrow as I can go here in the front, so half of 6 is 3. So, as long as my bumper and chassis in this front area here is at least 3 inches, it would be good. So, again, that is going to depend on axle choice, offsets, wheels, hexes, stuff like that. You kind of determine that measurement. It's not necessarily a standard measurement. You determine that measurement. Just the last bits, tube beds, flat beds, and then again, touching on the tire minimum and tire maximums and modifications allowed in Class 2. And then prohibited things for Class 2, rear wheel steer, dig, or selectable overdrive. And again, if you have those, they have to be mechanically locked out. So the last thing we're going to go over here a little bit today is Class 3. And then Class 3, again, is generally your more all-out class, or unlimited as it's commonly called. Like I mentioned before, all of them have an overall rectangle, center rectangle, front rectangle, and rear rectangle. Well, in Class 3, you only have to worry about the center and overall rectangle. Both front and rear rectangle sections must comply with overall rectangle sections. And then just all ground goes to steering allowed, types of chassis, body requirements, windshield, stuff like that. Flatbeds, tire minimums, tire maximums. One thing here that is a little different on Class 3 is cab height. And Class 3 previously did have a minimum height requirement, but it was based off your tires. Your body had to be half an inch within half an inch of your tires you're running. So if you were running 5.5 inch tall tires, your cab had to at least be 5 inches tall. So that measurement is no longer there. It's no longer based on your tires. It actually has a true measurement, which is 4 inches. Again, from the bottom edge of the body to the top of the body. That is where that 4 inch comes from, and that is your now measurement. Don't have to worry about how big your tires are anymore, stuff like that. So again, that also expands more on the building options and stuff like that. And again, this also has things with the 1 inch measurements and stuff. Again, that is something that is to be addressed. So we're not going to focus too much on that. If that has been freaking you out, calm down. Don't go super crazy on that section yet. A few other things here. It talks about width and the length. The overall length and coverage must meet or exceed the length of the wheelbase. So wheel nut to wheel nut, that is how long your body / chassis needs to be in order to past the overall rectangle section. And then it does talk here about bumpers and stuff like that. Some of the wording on here, like the bumpers and stuff like that, I am waiting for just some more feedback and stuff back before I go in depth on some of that, because I know there were several people that have posted the same kind of questions regarding bumper widths on the Class 3. So we'll wait and see how that turns out. Again, one more time touching, Class 3 now has a tire minimum as well as the tire maximum. Last part of Class 3 is all other allowed mods. Can all be used at the same time, including rear steer and dig / selectable overdrive. So Class 3 before, you could have 4-wheel steer and or dig, but you could only use one on a course. Now, the way that is worded, you can use both rear wheel steer and dig on the same course if you have it. Same with the selectable overdrive transmissions. So that is opening up class 3 a little bit more for some more, just overall performance oriented stuff. So the last few things here on the rules are the scale points and the course points. And we're going to touch base on those in a future video. I have a feeling a few things are going to get, I think they were already trying to address a few things on here and some wording in some of these things, and which all those things were the major changes that are in question. So we will wait on those. We'll do those after another version or two come out and get a more finalized version, and then we'll come back and touch base on those. When after next couple versions, once pictures are updated and a few other things have changed, we'll do a couple more update videos covering the latest versions, stuff like that. And even later on, even if it's a short, simple video, I will try to stay on top of new versions. But like, here it is, quick and simple. Here's what's changed. Take a look, print off the new version. I will do my best. We're gonna wait a couple weeks for a couple more versions, everything settle out, and then we are gonna go in depth more in each of these classes. Take my 1, 2, and 3, set them down, read the rules, see what's not legal with my truck, what do I need to change, and then how I'm gonna change them, get them back to legal status, and then work on points and stuff like that. So this little SORRCA series I got is going to just be a kind of continuing on series, just because the way that everything is now, and there is so much information and it is changing. Hope you enjoyed the video. I know a lot of people, these new rules, it has been nonstop between all the Facebook groups or pages, social media, team chats. I know lots of people are in those. It has been just constant action since these rules got dropped. Everyone's got questions. Everyone's trying to figure out stuff. Some people are perfectly fine with stuff. Some people are, very, very upset. And I personally and others see it as just a new challenge. And I've seen several people talk about like new people getting in. They're like, is this just going to instantly discourage people? I don't think so. If anything, I honestly kind of see it as an advantage for new people getting into SORRCA, because they're not going to be in the mindset like a lot of us with the old rules. Well, it went from this to this. They're coming into this. They're coming into this is what it is. So I think for them, that can be an advantage. They're not kind of stuck in the old ways, as we would say. They have the newest stuff ready to rock and roll. They're going to see all the changes from the get-go. They're going to know the process from the start. It's the only process they're going to know. So if you are new and watching, look and getting into SORRCA, or you've been crawling for a while but haven't quite got to the SORRCA side of it, don't let all this discourage you. It's perfectly fine. We're all going to get through this. I think almost everybody has something to mess with on the trucks. And then I've known other people that thought they were totally out. Then they like I mentioned earlier, they sat down with the rules with their truck. And turns out they're like, oh, actually, I'm perfectly legal. Or I only have to change one thing. Definitely not the end of the world or our tiny RC hobby by any means. It's going to expand. But yes, again, I do see some of the downsides. This is going to have effect across the board, from local SORRCA events and clubs to larger events. It's going to put pressure on the judges. It's going to put pressure on the tech tables and just the event hosts and stuff. It's going to put pressure on a lot of people, but it's okay. We'll be able to adapt and overcome. I don't think with a problem, everyone's going to work together. And for the most part, honestly, this hobby is just full of tons and tons of helpful people, from companies' fan pages and stuff like that to class-specific pages. Overall, the community is still very, very helpful. And there are lots of people out there that do videos and show builds and stuff like that. So plenty of people out there in the hobby that do help and have tons of great information. But again, I will stress the links in the description. SORRCA page, the new SORRCA rules, and the feedback form. Definitely use the feedback form. That is what helps get these rules to the next level. Gets everything, eliminates as much of the gray area as possible, gets stuff defined better and stuff like that. That is truly what helps us get that feedback going and stuff like that. Definitely any comments, questions, suggestions, anything like that, put them down below. I will really try to stay on top of the comments on this one and take any major concerns people have and try to do some research, see if I have any answers or better answers for them, or an area we need to focus on in some future videos. Expect several of these SORRCA videos to come out. They may be short, they may be long. It's going to be a process regardless. Time all this gets edited, it'll be November 3rd. So it will be Thursday. So should be live tonight. I'm sure we will talk about this quite a bit. I may be a little later than normal because we have some stuff to do. I have some stuff to do immediately following work to get set up for our comp this weekend. But I do plan on doing a live stream. We will talk SORRCA rules and stuff like that. Maybe even have some more answers and some other stuff we can clarify as we go. We're all in this new rectangle together, so hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and until next time, everyone, have a great one. Crawl on.